Well, good morning. Welcome to Zen Live and ideas that can change your world. And last night we were we're picking up the thread from Ken Burns' Vietnam, and we're still in 1968. And in my life and in the nation's life, 1968 is kind of like the 1968 is kind of like that. 1968 is going up and down. And so we're still somewhere down in here, I think. 2017. And if you just to recap a little bit about the last night's documentary, it got to the Democratic Convention. And I learned something I didn't, refreshed me, and I learned something that I didn't know. Particularly was that Nixon, in other words, the North Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, the Americans, and the South Vietnamese, that's four of them, they were all having a peace conference in Geneva, and it took them 18 months just to figure out on how to kind of a table they wanted. The North Vietnamese wanted a table with four sides: Viet Cong, North Vietnamese, South Vietnamese, and Americans. And the South Vietnamese wanted the Viet Cong, North Vietnamese to be on one side, a three-sided table. So that blocked them. So Russia suggested a round table. Okay. So they went for a round table. But when Nixon was running, and he became the Republican candidate, he sent a secret mission to South Vietnamese and said, if you refuse to participate in the peace, if you withdraw from the peace talks and I get elected, then I will enforce a harder bargain on the North Vietnamese. So the South Vietnamese withdrew from the peace talks right before the Democratic election. And that, that reminded me of Reagan did that. Oh, but the follow-up was that LBJ, they knew about it because they had bugged, the people involved were bugged, and LBJ confronted Nixon with it on the phone. There's a telephone call. And he said, no, we didn't do that. But LBJ knew he did it because the CIA had bugged, FBI had bugged him. But he didn't want to reveal that he had bugged his sources. He didn't want to reveal that the way they knew the information. So he didn't say anything. So the public never knew that Nixon had, and LBJ called it treason, had interfered with a foreign government with peace talks. Which is what Reagan did when Carter was trying to be reelected. If you remember that, Reagan got the Iranians to withhold releasing the hostages until after the election. So anyway, the thought I had when Nixon came in, Nixon was, if you recall now, I don't know if everybody listening here is following it, but the Democratic Convention had Humphrey, who was the LBJ's vice president, had supported the war, although he went against it later. And then you had Robert Kennedy was running, and he would probably have won, but he got assassinated. So that left McCarthy, who was an anti-war Democratic candidate, and then McGovern came in there at the last minute to split that up. So they split the anti-war vote, and Humphrey got nominated. So, but Humphrey was associated with the war. But Nixon came in, and I was reminded of Trump. He came in on the restore order. And also, I'll end the war, he promised, but he didn't. But he came in with, I got a plan to end the war, but he didn't. But he also came in on the promise of restoring order, and I think he won very handily during that election. And but I just the whole documentary really gives me a wide-angle view of the fear. I brought this is one of my favorite props here. That's an egg of a umu. This egg is a great metaphor for culture, society, reality. We see the world through the eyes of culture. I've been talking about this for a week now, if not longer. I know maybe you're tired of it. But we're trying to understand the power of culture and how it shapes the way we see reality. And that there are two natural imperatives in human life. One of them is to explore, and the other one is to be secure. You can see right here in the egg that these two drives are in competition. The drive to be secure says stay in the egg. If there's a crack in it, heal it. Cover it back up. Restore the egg. It's safe in here. We like it in here. It's nice and cozy inside the egg. But the other impulse is to what's on the outside of the egg. I know there's a boundary here. I feel a boundary. I can't go beyond it. Something's restricting me. What's beyond it? I must go beyond. I must explore. I must expand. There are new worlds to live in. There is something beyond this egg. But culture says, no, stay within. Come back in. It's safe in here. And these two forces compete with each other. So the movement of the 60s was a movement of exploring. If you look at there was bad sides to it, but I mean the force of it was that of exploring beyond the cosmic egg of the 50s. And that was sexual repression of women, primarily the repression of sexuality, repression of alternate styles of living, the exploration of new ways of relationship, the exploration of new ways of community, the exploration of morality, patriotism. That's why there was so much rock and roll in the 60s, so much art. It was breaking out of this egg. Creativity, energy, consciousness was in psychedelic, and all this, and LSD is a spiritual movement. See, all the early movements of the 60s was very idealistic and very creative and very adventuresome. Where to explore and discover. It was a explosion of this impulse to transcend, you see. And even in the books, like God is dead, anything is possible. Well, the God of culture was dead. It was all about God becomes incorporated into culture, you see. God becomes the God of the egg. So religion and culture work, and education all work together to keep you within the cultural egg. And it punishes exploration. It punishes individuality. It punishes doubt and questioning, you see. You don't question the egg. You can't question the egg. If you are, you're going to get burned at the stake, so to speak, you see. So this is a great metaphor for me. And of course, my own personal story is that in 1968, I dropped out of the egg. I mean, I literally, when a woman gives birth and the baby just drops on the floor, I basically dropped out of that egg, like Mr. Bean when he comes into the opening logo of his movie, and he kind of like comes plop. He's just kind of like from an alien. Where does Mr. Bean come from? He goes plop, and he gets up and he goes running around. He's free of culture. Have you ever seen Mr. Bean as a spiritual metaphor? He's kind of like a parody of awakening. He's an awakened soul, but is portrayed as an idiot. Anyway, so I've been looking at, and I don't want to go too far into Trump now because I want to stay back here kind of like referencing 1968 and where we are in the documentary as my guide. So, but anyway, Trump came in to restore America, just like Nixon came in to restore America. Law and order. Get these rapist immigrants out of here. Get these uppity blacks out of here. Get these, grab the woman's pussy. So this whole masculine bravado of restoring order and security. The wall is all about security. The wall is all about security. It's not about exploration beyond the egg. The wall is all about repairing the egg and keeping all the bad things out. So we're just nice little white yolk in here, you see. Get all the, no, we don't need brown eggs. We need white eggs. Don't want any speckled eggs. Got white eggs. So just get that egg with the white yolk in and keep all the brown eggs and all that out there. Make that shell stronger. That was Nixon. And that was Trump. So you have to understand Trump and why he's, what our attraction is to him. It's the same attraction we had for Nixon. Get all those hippies out of here. All those peaceniks. Get all those feminists, all those tree huggers, all those hippies and drug addicts, mystics. Get them all out. Build a wall. Make that shell strong. Just have some nice white yolk in there. You see. Christian yolk. Christian. White Christian. So anyway, we can see a parallel here. History repeats itself. When things get a little uppity, when things get a little shaken up, restore order comes in. Law and order. So the great backlash of 1968, we're still going through that. But there is another hippie revolution going on now. And I don't think it can be contained. But you see, the hippie revolution, and I'll just say hippie revolution, but the hippie revolution of the 60s was physical, visible, in art, but the computers hadn't been invented yet. Not the kind we have today. There was no internet. So our culture today, well, let's put it this way. I don't know where it's going to peak, but there is, I see, the same revolution going on now on the internet. Do you realize how much freedom there is on the internet? Do you realize how much exploration there is on the internet? Well, just the other day, they've got a free webinar of a talk with a conversation with Eckhart Tolle and Deepak Chopra. Okay? Now, these are the two probably strongest pop culture spiritual teachers. I mean, they write books, they're on the internet, they're in this new field. So there's a new field of culture being created that is in the internet. Where do our young people live now? I mean, my son was over here with his two teenage young daughters, right in there, and I watched her the girl's fingers going, and her little thumbs were just writing faster than I could think. Of course, kids are probably going to end up with carpal thumbdom. We're going to have a new digital problem with kids who are going to have carpal tunnel thumbdom. Their thumbs won't straighten out. So, but anyway, in this new field, God is dead. Everything is possible. You're interacting with it. You're forming your own communities. You're sharing all of the wisdom of humanity. It's like it's the storehouse of humanity, which prior to now is stored in books. And if you go back that way, I mean, you look back to the revolution we're having now is equivalent to the invention of the printing press. Before the printing press was invented, books were hand copied. And only monks knew how to do that. The monks would copy a manuscript in these beautiful calligraphies, When you look at these medieval books, they're works of art. But nobody could read. Why read? There are no books. The priests could read. So, so the church had the books and the knowledge. So the church was the Christian church in Western society was the monasteries where the educated people were, the language, the reading, the books were stored there. But with the printing press, it was disseminated and people learned how to read, and you had education and so forth. A huge revolution in humanity with that. And I think we're at the same place today. From the printing press to the internet. So now all knowledge is contained in the internet. It's amazing. Whatever you want to know, ask Google. You don't ask Jeeves. You don't ask. I used to sell World Book Encyclopedia. And we sold World Book Encyclopedia as competition against Britannica, because Britannica was the church of knowledge, you see. Britannica was like the Catholic Church. And World Book was kind of like the Protestants. Well, everybody can afford a World Book. Maybe you can't afford the Britannica, but you can get the World Book, you see. But this was the doorway to knowledge. So don't you want your child to have an education? Don't you want your child to succeed? Don't you want your child to have the world at his fingertips? Well, of course you do. And you want this World Book Encyclopedia, don't you? I mean, would you want to deny your child an education? Well, now the World Book Encyclopedia and the Britannica is the internet, and you don't have to buy it. You see, we have to buy the cell phone. So instead of buying encyclopedias, we buy one of these. And our teenagers are going to have one. What teenager would be denied a cell phone? Why, that would be like putting your teenager in the basement. So, teens love it because on the internet, guess what? You're out of the parental egg. On the internet, you're out of the egg. Anything is possible. Adventure, knowledge, exploration, relationship. The whole thing is there. And also risk. Sex is there. Everything. Just a thumb click away. Isn't that interesting? We don't really understand, I think, what's going on now. From a wider angle, history is very long, and the great revolutions of humanity are all there, but maybe there's 300 or 400 or 500 years between them. So I think we're really back at the point where the Middle Ages collapsed, and the printing press and capitalism and Protestantism and secular nationalism, all these forces, you see. Before that it was just all one big Holy Roman Catholic egg. And you did not dare doubt that, or you were going to get literally burned at a stake. If you dare question the egg, you were going to get burnt, hunted down and killed. So everybody was in that egg. But then it cracked, you see. All these forces cracked it open. Printing press, Martin Luther, kings, King Henry VIII cracked the egg. I want an English egg. I don't want an Italian Roman egg. So different nations all became nation states, became an egg, national cultures. And then America came along and created a secular egg, you see. So anyway, we're created a new egg now. And we don't know where it's going to go. We don't know how big it's going to get. We're breaking out. The internet is breaking us out of the cultural egg in the same way that the hippies broke out of the cultural egg of the 50s. So, anyway, my bell rang. So it's a brave new world. And I just had the idea, that when I saw Nixon standing up there winning the election with all of his promises, and then what happened? He started off as a crook. He started off with a lie. He started off with deception. And the closing remark last night that Nixon probably, what drove Nixon into his dark side was the fear that he would be exposed as influencing the election. Doesn't that sound familiar? Trump's fear of being exposed, that he influenced the election by collaborating with a foreign government. Isn't that interesting? I'll see you this evening at Martini time.